everyone. We'll go ahead and let folks start filtering into the Zoom room. It is great to see you. We are so glad to have you and talk about our top products for back to school. So um, settle in. While people are kind of joining us, go ahead and let us know in the chat box at the bottom of your screen whether or not you've joined us for a webinar before. I'd love to know, who's new, if if you've been around. Very cool. It's Mary's first time. Thank you so much for joining us. Oh, nice. So it looks like we have a nice mix of folks who have joined us for a webinar before and who haven't. So this will be a real treat. We have a ton of experts on the line today. So we'll have lots of opportunities for you to ask questions, see what the new school year is bringing. So getting excited. Very cool. Steve, thank you for joining us. Welcome to your first Vernier webinar. And Ed, very nice. All right, in an effort to make the most of the time we have, I'm going to break into some quick housekeeping items and then I'll pass you off to our fabulous presenters. I'm Dylan, I'm with Vernier. I basically just wanted to let you know that a recording of this webinar will be available on our website as well as our YouTube. It typically takes about 3 to 5 business days to get that uploaded, but you will receive an email with the recording as well as some resources that we've included for you today. So keep an eye on your inbox and we'll make sure you get those resources right to your email. And we are here to answer your questions today. So please use that webinar chat that we have been dropping our answers into already to go ahead and ask us questions. Make sure that when you are asking that question, you just have it set so that everyone can see your question. You'll be able to toggle between who can see your question on that little like blue line just above the chat box. So make sure you have that set to everyone. We will be in the chat answering everything we can. If there's anything we can't answer, we may hop in and ask Colleen. And if there's something that we don't get to, please feel free to reach out to us at support@vernier.com and we'd be happy to help you. With that, I will pass you off to our presenters. Thank you so much again for joining us.
Good afternoon, everybody. Let me switch over to sharing my screen here. Hopefully everybody can see that now. So you should be joining us for our webinar today of talking about back to school essentials, where we're going to talk about what we consider our top 6 sensors. So these are the sensors that we see most classrooms tend to purchase, and we're going to kind of go over some, basics with them, tips and tricks, things like that. So a little bit of background. I'm Colleen. I am a biology and environmental science specialist here. I taught in Houston, Texas for 6 years, where I taught grade level biology, pre-AP biology, and AP environmental science. And when I'm not working or going to conferences or answering phone calls to help teachers like you guys, I like to bird and spend as much time as I can in nature. And then we also have Josh joining us, which I don't know, do you want to?
Sure, I'll just do everything. I'm Josh. I am a physics and engineering specialist here at Vernier. Like Colleen, I also taught high school. I was in Northern Virginia. I taught conceptual to AP physics and engineering, and mentored our school robotics team. Here at Vernier, like Colleen, I do a lot of teacher training. We help out with product development, and we also answer a lot of questions. So if you call on the phone or use the chat feature on our website or email us, it's likely that one of us will be the ones answering those questions. I also want to recognize that one of our other colleagues, one of our chemistry colleagues, Noose, is helping us out today. He'll be answering questions in the chat, and should we get ourselves into too deep of trouble, he might dig us out when we come to the chemistry sensors.
Yeah. Also, it's helpful there because there's a lot of you online today, which is awesome to see. So we're really excited to have everybody here. So like Dylan said, as we go, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to throw them in the chat there, and we will answer them the best to our ability. So just to make sure before we start that I want to make sure to let you know that we are going to be talking about both GoDirect and LabQuest sensors. So everything we're talking about today is going to apply to both of those sensors, because we know we have a lot of users that kind of have a combination of the two or one or the other. So to start things off, we're going to start with our temperature sensors. And the temperature sensors are what we consider kind of to be our most versatile sensor that is out there. All different grade levels can use it, K through 16. We have books specifically written for elementary school. We have a book all about just temperature and using the temperature probe for elementary schools. But we also use it in biology, chemistry, environmental, earth, and physical science. So it's one of those sensors that's going to be used for everything and anything. And the really nice thing with a temperature probe or a temperature sensor is that it's a great way to introduce data collection. It's one of those sensors that you can do an experiment with it in 20 seconds. It's a super fast response. And it helps to get the students used to the data collection software as well. So just to do kind of a quick demonstration with that, I am going to pull over our graphical analysis app here, and I am going to change it a little bit so it gets a little bit bigger for you to see, a little nicer there. And I'm just going to go ahead and connect a Go Direct sensor. Just because right now it's what I have and what is easiest for me. So I'm connecting a Go Direct temperature. See my Go Direct CO2. Should I connect to the right sensor there? And one of the easy experiments I like to do with the temperature probe, and this is something that we often do a lot to in workshops to get people used to and comfortable with the software, is just do something basic called hot hand, where we're going to see how hot our hand is. So I'm going to go here where it says mode time-based. I'm going to go ahead and just change my data collection 20 seconds. I'm going to click done. And then I'm going to put my hand on the bottom of the temperature probe and press collect. And we're immediately right now collecting data. Now, the reason I'm putting my hand on the bottom of the temperature probe is because that's where the thermistor is located. So if students hold it up here, you're not going to see a temperature change. You want to have it that very bottom tip. That's also the area that you would put into, say, water or soil or other things. So we've already got our data collected. It was super simple. So I can just click over here and see my hand temperature reached 31.4 degrees. And you can see it even went a little bit higher if we went faster. The other great thing I can do with this temperature probe is if I had different temperatures of water, what I could do is actually have students add a prediction here and draw on the graph where they would say, okay, I want to draw the letter M. So I'm going to do a trace on here, then I can save it. And then I'm going to use warm and cold water to then be able to draw that letter as well. I don't have that here today because we're kind of trying to fit a lot into this webinar, but it's one of those tools that's a fantastic one to do to get used to. In the resources that we have available for this webinar, I made sure to put in there that we had this hot hand experiment as a beginning experiment there for you. So other things that you can use the temperature probe for, hot hand is obviously the one I just showed. Other great things are just doing evaporation. You can do evaporation of water, of different alcohols, things like that. We can look at soil temperature or water temperature. And one of the most fun activities I could say, especially for biology, is doing the energy in food, because that does involve fire. So you get to light something on fire and see how much it raises water's temperature by monitoring it with the temperature probe. Now, on that note, just because you have a flame does not mean the temperature probe can go in the flame. Never place a temperature probe in a flame or on a hot plate. That will immediately fry that thermistor at the very tip of your sensor. The other thing that we like to make sure, I'm going to stop sharing here so you can see, is with your cabled sensors, like with the LabQuest version of the temperature probe or any probe, is you don't want to take that wire and wrap it around the sensor. Because as you do that, you're going to actually putting stress on this point. so that here those wires are going to break off. So what you want to do is take it, and I call it like an accordion fold, where I'm just going to take the sensor wire and accordion fold it up like this. And then the office, what we have is these great little Velcro tabs that you can get at office supply stores. You can also use twist ties or rubber bands even. But then I have it twisted like that so that it is stored in this way. And that way you're not wrapping the wire around the sensor, causing breakage here. And the other thing is to not let students actually take the sensor and swing it around by the wire as well. That will also cause the problem. This presentation, again, will also be available to you in the resources folder. And the link here takes you to the page of our website that has all of the different temperature probes listed. So what you can do is actually go to each of those temperature probes web page, and from there, let me go back here so you can actually see what I'm talking about. These additional details right here, that's going to take you to the page, and then on each product page, you can find the user manual along with the specifications of the range and accuracy and everything of the probe, and you can also find some tips and tricks of any troubleshooting problems you might have. Okay, so we're going to switch spots here. And Josh, take over.
All right. All right. I'm going to talk a little bit about the motion detector. The motion detector you may recognize. It's typically looks a little like a one-eyed monster. Sometimes you'll see it. It's like a green one like this. It has a pivoting head. Sometimes you'll see the temperature or the motion detector will be the same kind of shape, but it'll be black or gray. We've made a variety of them throughout the years. This is the LabQuest version that we make right now. And then kind of like the newest, latest and greatest is the GoDirect motion detector. This is typically used in physics classes, physical science. It's great for all ages. You know, you can do great motion activities through elementary all the way through college. And it works by ultrasound. It makes you'll hear a clicking noise. What it's actually doing is making a very high-pitched sound wave, somewhere around 40 kilohertz, and listening then for the echo, the reflection of that sound wave off of the target. It then uses the round trip time, the amount of time it takes to go out and come back to figure out how far away the object is. And so you end up with a really great position versus time graph. It kind of looks like an eye, but this gold foil transducer on the front here is actually like an ear. It's a very sensitive microphone, and it's listening for just that particular sound wave being reflected off. Because it's because of the way this transducer works, it really only works in one dimension. That means it can see things kind of in front of it, maybe if it's pointed up the ceiling above it, but it can't see just everything around it. You know, it's not like the motion detector that you might have in your classroom that just checks to see if there are occupants still in the classroom. Oftentimes you'll just set it on your lab bench and have students moving back and forth with it, or point it towards the ceiling and toss a ball. I'll demonstrate that here in a moment. You can also, attach it to the end of a dynamics cart or a dynamics track so that you can track carts. You can also, it's got a threaded hole on the back so that you can actually attach it to a ring stand or to a ceiling if you want to, say, jump beneath it, do an activity that way. One of the great things about the motion detector is you can track all sorts of objects. You know, it could be a student moving back and forth, a cart on a track. When I was teaching AP physics, we would do the coffee filter lab where you point it towards the ground and you drop coffee filters beneath it and measure the terminal velocity of those coffee filters. I would often do, on the very first day of school, I would do a graph matching activity because it's a great get kids out of their seats, use up some of that first day energy, and still have an opportunity to talk about physics and motion. I'm going to connect to this GoDirect motion detector and collect a little bit of data. I'm gonna connect here. I'm gonna switch my camera to. All right. So maybe I'll stop sharing for just a sec here while I show you kind of the setup. I'm over here. I've got just a Nerf ball, 8-inch Nerf ball. Here's my motion detector. It's pointing up towards the ceiling right now. And I want to capture the motion of the ball as it moves up and down. So I'm going to toss it. And I'm gonna, since it's pointed towards the ceiling, it's capturing the ball. And if I move it around the way, it's going to capture the ceiling. So I'm going to try to get to, as much as possible, hold the ball kind of right above it. And you want to.
I'm gonna go back to
Yes. So
sharing.
share screen so you can see, share my screen again so you can see the data as it comes in.
And go.
All right, so I'm just holding it still now. If I toss it, I get that nice parabola that I was expecting. And in graphical analysis, I could do a curve fit for that. I could figure out what the acceleration is due to gravity is on that. Graphical analysis has lots of, as the name implies, lots of analysis features. And we'll talk a little bit more about graphical analysis later, but this is the kind of data you get. Notice it's position versus time. The app also collects or calculates other data as well. In fact, it collects velocity versus time and acceleration as well. So if I go over here, I can say I want velocity instead of, and now I have a velocity graph, or I can even see acceleration as well. So the motion detector is really a great tool. I recently did a webinar on the motion detector. You can find that on our training page, and it's 45 minutes of just motion detector. If you want to learn more about the different kinds of motion detectors we have, the link here on this slide takes you to a page that tells you all about all the various motion detectors we've made. And yeah. So now I think next we have pH. All right. Switch back here. All right.
Switching back and forth.
Oh.
All right. So pH sensor. So our pH sensor is going to be a pretty general purpose sensor that's used primarily in chemistry, biology, and environmental science. Common activities that we're going to do with it are things like household acids and bases, where you're just looking at the pH of different substances that students can find around the home. In chemistry, you can do different types of titrations, acid-base titrations with it. And one of the things often environmental science is using water and soil pH and doing those types of measurements. So a couple kind of tips and tricks with your pH sensor is one is that it does need to be stored in a storage solution. If it is not stored in the storage solution, that is going to affect the life and the actual function of the sensor itself. You can make the storage solution from scratch if you have the chemicals to do that, or you can actually purchase it pre-made. How to make that storage solution is actually in the user manual for the pH sensor. So we have it all written out there exactly for how to make that. The other question we often get a lot on a pH sensor is, does it need to be calibrated? When you first get the sensor, often it's perfectly fine, no calibration is needed. But over time, due to how that sensor functions, it is going to kind of degrade and kind of get off. So you will want to calibrate it more often the older the sensor gets. Usually what I tell people is if you're just looking at something in general, like you want a general idea of a change of pH over time, calibration might not be as necessary. But if you're looking to do something like a titration or you're looking for absolute values such as an absolute value of a water pH or soil pH, you will definitely want to calibrate those before you use them. The other thing, like I said, is that they do degrade over time. It's one of those few sensors that does have a lifespan to it, and that lifespan can vary. So it kind of depends on how well they're taken care of and making sure that they are in the proper solution. So typically anywhere from 6 to 8 years is something that you can look at of their livelihood. The other thing to be careful with them is that there is on the tip of the sensor, let's see if I can get it to focus. Maybe not. There is an exposed glass bulb right there. You can kind of see it in the picture here on the website, or that I have on the slide here, is that is an exposed glass bulb, so it can break. So it's something you want to make sure you forewarn your students that they are very careful with, because just knocking it against a beaker or even gently tapping it can cause that bulb to break. And if it breaks, there's no repair we can do for it. So sadly, it would be a replacement of the sensor. The GoDirect and LabQuest sensors are going to function exactly the same. The big difference between them, as you can probably see on this picture here, is the GoDirect sensor has an electrode amplifier that can detach by a BNC connection, while the regular LabQuest pH sensor does not. That means that as the GoDirect sensor ages out, you can just replace this bottom portion of the sensor. You don't have to replace the entire sensor like you do with a LabQuest version. We also did a webinar about a year ago that is, again, a 45-minute webinar, I believe, on everything and anything you could possibly want or need to know about a pH sensor. My colleague Melissa and Noose, who's with us here today, are the ones that did that. So if you have more questions about pH sensors, I highly recommend checking that webinar out or giving us a call. You can, again, we have a link here to the page that shows all of our different types of pH sensors, which you are more than welcome to check out and see about any questions to your answers to your questions. And that's also where you can find those user manuals that have the instructions on how to make that storage solution. Good. All right. Now we're on to more fun with biology. So a lot of questions we get are on the oxygen gas sensors. So oxygen gas sensors, we're primarily seeing them used in life science, so biology, environmental science. They are going to be measuring the total gas concentration in air. Key, in air. They are not to be used with anything aquatic or aqueous whatsoever. So commonly, we're going to see the sensor used most often in photosynthesis and cellular respiration labs, and they can also be used in some enzyme labs such as peroxidase. Now, the key with this sensor is that it has to be stored upright. Even over the time you're not using it, you want to make sure it's being stored directly up and down. A lot of times what I do is when I store a sensor, I store the oxygen sensor in the Nalgene bottle that it comes with, because that's a perfect thing for it just to sit in and sit nicely and be up and down. Now, the reason we have to store this up and down is there is an electrochemical cell inside the sensor that's made of a gel matrix. And if we put it on its side, it's actually going to give us bad readings because that causes the gel to move around as well. These sensors are ones like the pH sensor. They do have a lifespan to them. So they can be refurbished though. The electrochemical cell inside of them can be replaced. It's about $100 to do the repair for replacement for those. And typically what I tend to see is these can last, like the pH probe, anywhere from 6 to 8 years. There are specific ways that we can tell if your oxygen gas sensor needs to be refurbished or not. And what you can do if you have questions about it at all, just jump into chat on our website, give us a call or send us an email, and we'll be happy. What we can actually do is look up the age of your sensors. And also we can tell you how to look exactly how old your, what the state, sorry, not the age, but what the state of your electrochemical cell in your sensor is. And we actually on the website also have on the user manual and information facts for these sensors have that information there as well, along with how to properly calibrate, because like the pH sensors, these do decrease calibration over time just because of the age. So they will want to be recalibrated every so often the older they get. On the same note, with oxygen, we often have the carbon dioxide sensor used in conjunction with it. Now, the carbon dioxide sensor, again, is used in life science, biology, environmental science, and it's going to measure your total carbon dioxide gas concentration in air. So again, not for water. And you might notice on the newer Go Direct sensors, we have little water droplets with a line through them to help further emphasize these are not to get wet. That also means that you want to be careful in using them in a high humidity environment as well, because the higher the humidity, the higher the chance of water condensing on the internal electronics and actually shorting the sensor out. So you want to be careful with that. The great thing about the carbon dioxide gas sensor is that it does not have necessarily a degradation to it. So it can last a really long time. There is a lamp inside of it. That's how it's measuring the CO2 in the air. That lamp will eventually go out, but I have seen CO2 sensors last upwards to 12 years. So it's going to be a while before that sensor dies on you. Great experiments to do with it. Like I said, photosynthesis. And one of the best ones that I love is doing different types of cell respiration with it. You can create a little soil chamber and do soil respiration to look at all the microbes that are growing in soil, plant cell respiration, invertebrates, vertebrates, all sorts of organisms. And like I even had a customer call recently who was using this to measure the respiration of worms. And the reason she called is why you do want to be careful with those invertebrates, because they will and potentially can crawl inside the sensor. So she actually had a worm get in the sensor that she had to send in for us to help get it out. So careful with those worms. Again, like the others, we have a link to our website there that you can check your carbon dioxide gas with it. Now, the calibration on these is a little different than others, and I think the calibration is more of a reset. So the sensor is set at atmospheric concentration of about 400 ppm. So you might get a reading that's higher or lower. Don't be too surprised, especially inside. If I were to connect, actually, let me connect this right now. I'm expecting this room to be very high in CO2 concentration, purely because of me and Josh sitting in this room with a closed door, talking and breathing a lot. 410, not too bad.
I've been holding my breath.
You've been holding your breath. Okay, I appreciate you holding your breath, Josh.
I got a question here in the chat, actually. I don't know the answer to. You know, the oxygen gas sensor, it needs to be stored like upright.
Correct.
Does the CO2 sensor need to as well?
No, that is a great question. The CO2 sensor does not need to be stored upright. The CO2 sensor can be stored on its side. It can be stored upside down. It can be stored any which way. So here you can see, at first it was about 410, and now as it's been reading the CO2 gas levels, we're now quite a bit higher here. So Josh, you need to keep holding your breath and just make sure, please don't pass out on me. My CPR certification is not up to date. This is also a great sensor to show some of the differences between the Go Direct version of the sensor and the LabQuest version of the sensor. The GoDirect version of the sensor is multi-sensor. So it can give us not only carbon dioxide gas levels, but also has a temperature probe inside of it and a relative humidity sensor as well. While our normal LabQuest sensor is only able to measure CO2 gas concentration, and that is it. But again, both sensors can be used with the graphical analysis software, and both are excellent ones to have and great ones to use, especially for cell respiration. It really helps students kind of understand and grasp that concept of cell respiration, because essentially we're talking about an invisible gas to them. All right, back to Josh.
All right.
I go back, you go forward. Stuck on the wall. No.
Here we are. All right.
Okay.
So we've made a number of force sensors over the years. And like Colleen mentioned with the carbon dioxide sensor, the latest and greatest one, the GoDirect Force and Acceleration, takes advantage of the fact that we can bundle a lot of probes, sensors into the same probe with the GoDirect format. So this force sensor, it looks a lot like our older dual range force sensor. The dual range force sensor was just force. This one also has a 3-axis accelerometer and a 3-axis gyro in it. So the accelerometer gives us acceleration in each of the 3 dimensions, and the gyro actually gives us kind of like rotational motion, and it'd be measured in radians per second on each of the 3 axes. This kind of probe, because it's got all these sensors in it, it's often used in physics and physical science. Sometimes you'll use it like this, and you'll use the hook to hang things off of it. Maybe you're doing like a buoyancy lab, or maybe you're dragging hooky blocks or shoes across the tabletop to measure friction. You can also swap out the hook for like a rubber bumper if you want to push things, or you want to knock on, press on things. Our physiologists made a little accessory for this that actually makes this into a reflex hammer, which is kind of fun. You can hang this from a ring stand. You can hang it by its hook. You can tape it to a box if you want to measure the accelerations. It's really a great and versatile sensor, and one that has just lots and lots of opportunities available to it. There is a link here that will take you to kind of all of our force sensors and that sort of thing. I want to show you a little bit, a Newton's second law experiment that you can do with just this one probe. I'm going to move this over here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hang this from a spring and let it bounce up and down and collect some data like that. All I'm doing is just attaching the probe to my little spring here, and I'm going to collect force and acceleration data. I'm going to connect here. In graphical analysis, when you connect to a probe, it'll kind of give you some default settings. I'm going to change one of those and get the x-axis acceleration as well. And I'm just going to close this out. All right, Newton's second law, that's the relationship between force and acceleration. And the GoDirect force and acceleration sensor, it can measure both force and acceleration. So it's really tempting to do a Newton's second law experiment. I'm going to just let this thing start bouncing. It's kind of just bouncing up and down here. And I'll collect some force and acceleration data. And it looks like kind of what you'd expect, it kind of, sometimes it's bigger, sometimes it's smaller. If you look at when the force is at a maximum, you can see that the acceleration is also at a maximum. If you go, the minimums line up, it makes sense. This is what you'd expect, the two kind of go hand in hand. But Newton's second law says that these two curves are actually proportional to each other, that the net force on the object creates the acceleration that you see in it. And you can actually show that here. I'm going to go to just a single graph, and I'm going to look at force not versus time, but rather force versus acceleration. And I get kind of this line. It's a little confusing because graphical analysis right now is connecting all the dots. I want to see just the data points themselves here. And you can see that it does create this nice line here. And if I do a curve fit, just a linear curve fit, I know the slope of that line is the mass of my force sensor here. It's about 80 grams, you know, and that comes just straight from the slope of this force versus acceleration here. I could add some washers or hang some weights off the bottom of this and do that same, just collect some force and acceleration data again and find that I have a different slope here. So let me switch gears a little bit here. We've been talking about the actual probes, and I'm going to switch to talking about just the graphical analysis app itself. If you're a longtime Vernier user, you're probably familiar with our Logger Pro software. Logger Pro has been around forever. It's a great app. It does a million different things. It was also...
They wanted to see how you hooked it up to the spring, because they can't see it on the camera.
It's just, all it is just hanging straight from the from by its hook on the spring. Logger Pro has been around for a long time, and it was created kind of in a different era of computing. You know, everybody had a PC or a Mac, and it was, you know, you had a mouse and you got lots of menus. When iPads became a thing, we knew we needed to make something like Logger Pro, but for an iPad. An iPad, you're not going to connect a keyboard and a mouse to an iPad. That kind of defeats the whole purpose of an iPad. So that's where graphical analysis came from. Kind of a modern app that was touch friendly that would do data collection and analysis. Since then, it's expanded, and now we have versions of graphical analysis for Windows, Mac OS, Android, and Chrome OS as well. In fact, you don't even need to have installed if you don't want to. If you use Chrome or Edge in your browser and you just plug in the address bar, you plug in graphicalanalysis.app, it will pull up the graphical analysis app and it'll just run within your browser.
And that's, somebody asked if there was a workaround for
install
an app. So.
Yeah. If you can't install the app, but you have a Chrome browser on your device, you can just open it within the browser. It's compatible with all of our probes, so GoDirect or LabQuest. Obviously, the GoDirect sensors, you're just going to plug in USB or connect Bluetooth. If you're using our LabQuest sensors, you'll need to use an interface like a LabQuest Mini or a LabQuest 3 or LabQuest 2 or something like that. And it looks and feels the same across all of those different platforms. So if you as a teacher have been given a Mac, but your students use Chromebooks, it looks just the same on all of them. There is when you download graphical analysis, you get the basic or the free version. It's just, you go to the website, you download it, install it, or you go to the browser and you plug in graphicalanalysis.app. That basic, free version, it can do, I would say, somewhere on the order of say 75% of what Logger Pro can do. You can collect data, you can analyze it, you can do calibrations and stuff like that. We have some of the more advanced analysis features and some remote learning features and data sharing features are available in a pro version. The pro version of graphical analysis is a paid license version. So you go to the website and buy a 1-year license or a 3-year license, something like that. We give you a key, like a little 8-character code that then you plug into your basic version of the app, and that unlocks the pro features. The link on this particular slide takes you to a page that talks a little bit about graphical analysis Pro. There's a link on that page where you can go then to download it and install it if you need to. All right, so we've talked about probes, we've talked about the software. Now Colleen's going to talk to us a little bit about the beginning of the school year. You're pulling all this stuff out of your closet. What do you do to get ready for the year with your Vernier software and probes?
Move this silly force sensor out of my face. You physics people. I forgot if Josh mentioned, but that link about graphical analysis also takes you to a great comparison table that shows you the differences between free and pro. So you can kind of see what the advantages of having the licensed version is. So on that note, one of the biggest things I tell people to do at the beginning of the school year is update, update, update. Make sure you start the year with the most recent software updates. Whether you're using Logger Pro, whether you're using LabQuest devices, or even graphical analysis, depending on how your school district and tech people have it set up. Ideally, the graphical analysis app should update automatically, but sometimes IT departments have them locked down so they don't. So you want to make sure that you go and talk to your IT department and have the most recent version available. The link on this slide here, this will take you to our downloads page that will actually have and take you to the most recent updated versions. Some other applications we didn't talk about is if you are teaching chemistry or biology and use spectrophotometers, the app you'll want to download is called Spectral Analysis. If you are a chemistry faculty that are using things like mini GC, sorry, completely blanked on the name of a gas chromatograph there. There's a different app called Instrumental Analysis. The other thing you want to look at too is if you're teaching physics or doing kind of an exercise science course, we have a Vernier video analysis app that is also web-based. So you do not have to download an app. It is just a web page address of videoanalysis.app, if I remember correctly, for video analysis, videoanalysis.app. Sadly, there isn't really a free version of that, but it is a low license fee as well. The other thing I tell people is check your online account for your most up-to-date book downloads. There is a lot of people I've been talking to kind of making this transition between LabQuest sensors to GoDirect sensors. We have done all the groundwork for you if you are using any of our lab activities. We had made sure to get on the website. We have gotten all of the majority of the books now updated so that you have instructions on how to use GoDirect sensors with graphical analysis, and in some cases, how to use LabQuest sensors with graphical analysis as well. And if your school has purchased a book license, that is a site license, and once it was purchased, everybody should have it. So you will also get those most up-to-date downloads. So make sure to check that out. And what I can quick do here is if I escape out of this, I can show you our website of where you would find those downloads. So share my screen again. There we go. So you can see right here where it says login register. That is where you're going to want to go to actually log in and find your information. So I am going to do mine. Oops, helps if I type it right. See if I did that right. It's always pressure when you're typing in a password and everybody's waiting for you to do it. Hi, it worked.
All right.
So this is when you log into your account, it will change here. And now it says my account. And you can see this is where I have, not only do I have my books, but I've got software installers here. It will, if you have a subscription to graphical analysis or video analysis, it'll have that listed there. And then these are all the books that I have access to, which for me are quite a bit because, you know, I kind of work here, so it's a good idea to have access to all these books. But what we can do is we can go and look at view product information. And what that will do is just going to take you to the book website. So you can kind of see what that book is about. If you click on download electronic resources, what that will do is download a zipped file that is going to have a PDF of the entire book in case you really want to print the entire book out. For some of these, that would be about like 400 plus pages. But it will also have each individual lab, not only the student versions, but also the teacher notes as well with it in PDF form for all the different ways that you can do the activities in Logger Pro, with a LabQuest, or with graphical analysis, either using LabQuest or GoDirect sensors. Also included in that download folder is going to be the Word files for the student versions of those experiments so that you can modify them to your heart's desire and change them up as however you want them to do. Add things in, remove things out, whatever you would like. So that comes kind of to the end. I'm sorry if we went really fast, but it was like you saw, it was a lot of information to cover in about 45 minutes. We can stay on for a little bit longer and answer any other questions you might have. Also, great ways we have become so much more accessible now in the advent of new technologies is that you can chat with us on our website. You can email us at support@vernier.com. You can also give us a call. We are all former teachers here in this tech support department, and our job is here to help you answer your questions, help you out in any possible way that we can to make sure that you are going to be absolutely successful in the classroom this school year. So, on that note, any last questions?
Doesn't look like we have any unanswered questions in the chat.
Awesome. Well, we really look forward to, thank you having it. Thank you everybody for coming out. Oh, it looks like someone asked if we do have some more maths. We actually do have some, I think we have one specific book that's dealing with math in science. It's a little bit of an older book, but we do have something that is available for that. But we make sure a lot of what we find is a lot of math teachers will get books such as our physical science with Vernier book and find ways of using some of the activities in those books in their math classes quite a bit. How do we
actually have a group of math teachers in the office this week?
Yeah. Oh, someone said, how do we get an account if we don't have one now? So on our website, there is the button that says create account or log in. You want to go there and you're going to want to use your school email address. That way we can link your school titles that they have purchased with your account. That way you'll have access to them. All right. And so if you, so Melissa said, you know, I know we had the old printed books. Often, if you had any books that were, you know, biology with Vernier, chemistry with Vernier, you will have access to the electronic versions. Having the print version gives you access to the electronic version as well. Pip, yes, I believe the accounts are only for US customers. For the UK, I know
We do have a deal.
we have Vince
dealer,
English
yeah.
as our dealer out in the UK. And so if you email us, we can get you in contact with him to get you access to resources. So the copy of the presentation should be in the folder that Dylan, could you relink the access to the folder in here too? When will Vernier be adding a fan accessory for the GoDirect carts, Josh? Soon. Keep your eyes open.
I got to work on it. It's just been lots of fun.
Soon.
I think Canada also uses our website for.
Yes,
accounts.
I think Canada does use our website for the accounts. So I believe you can get your online account if you're in Canada. All right, that seems to be the end. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We really appreciate it. This has been our best turnout ever for a webinar. And I hope everybody has a fantastic school year. And, you know, hang in there. It's going to be awesome. Have a great day, everybody. And thank you for joining us.